Well, for Aboriginal kids who are tied up in the children's aid system, in the foster care system, we all know there's a very large need for a program. So in our community, we had some very excellent workers who just said, no, bring them out. I got March break off. My kids are old. Bring them over. And so through that sharing and through looking at those kids who were in foster care and who had lost their identity, the workers said there's got to be something created. So they sat down and just brainstormed ideas. And so they come up with a program called Biskabiwuk. And Biskabiwuk program is for children who are in care and foster care in mainstream society. And what that helped those children identify with is that they still have and still belong to a First Nation community. So how we achieved that was to bring them into the community in March break with their foster parents, and the foster parents would go off and do their cultural safety, cultural congruency, cultural competency, whatever you want to call it. And our workers would work with the children, and we wouldn't get into so much ceremony yet, but we would talk about their knowledge. Again, we would assess, what's your knowledge? Have you smudged? Do you know what sweetgrass is? Do you know what the 4 medicines are? Do you know about medicine wheel? And so a very quick assessment. And based on the amount of children who knew or did not know about their identity, we would enter into a program of talking about the 4 colors, the 4 major colors you see in the medicine wheel, and help them identify with that, what that means. So we'd get into a really quick, almost immersion thing, and of kids, their age groups, so your attention span was very short. So it's keep them engaged, so we found ways to engage. Coloring, drawing, watching videos. And that lasted probably about most of the morning by the time they got hungry. Lunch was Indian tacos, corn soup, fried bread. Was looking at tea. This time of the year, great teaching time, sassafras tea, good blood thinner. Looking at tree sap, sweet water is another one. It's a good blood thinner, it helps you. My grandmother used to take me back into the little sugar bush she had run every year. And on the way, here, take this. It's good for you. That's all she told me. It's good for you. And I remember that growing up, helping my uncle empty sap out of the cans on the side of the tree. Yeah, take a little sip. I just remembered that. Then we'd let them run loose. We'd take them back to trails that my brother has, and we would do a small sugar camp with them, and we'd turn them loose in that. The idea of getting our children out to the land again, because there's energy in the land, and I think this is part of what I understand of newcomers to North America. The people I worked with before I became a social worker were from Europe, and they would always be talking about the old country. Oh, I got to go back to the old country before I die. I got to go back. So when they'd come back from the old country, there's just an energy that they had revisiting their homeland. And I thought about, we don't get that opportunity because we're already here. And in the teachings, the traditional teachings of take your shoes off and walk on the grass, touch the earth. I remember one camp we had last year in March. It was very nice. The weather was perfect, and the kids were running around in their socks. And the teachers, not the teachers, but the foster parents and the CS workers were just up in arms. But the kids were just happy. They built themselves a little fort back in there, and again, in child welfare, you're supposed to have a line of sight supervision, and these kids were nowhere to be seen. People were spazzing. So we went back, and just the energy of these kids, just the one couple of I understand were quite hyper, but back in there, they were just, and we just listened. Close your eyes. So the teaching of connection with the land is there's still a lot of teachings for our young people. And so what we're able to do with our young people is to help them identify with not so much who they are as a human being, but help them identify who they are as a Anishinaabe. And these kids, when they came out, one of the kids said, "Boy, I'm sure glad to be Indian again." And I thought, that was worth it, to hear them identify with that. Being connected with the land is also giving their identity. So we ran that in the spring with them, and the summertime we took another group of kids out onto one of the small islands on Walpole Island. They camped overnight, they had s'mores, they fished.
Squirrel?
No squirrel. Those guys are too noisy. Those squirrels go around the other end of the tree. We went out to Rhonda Nadi's place, that little island down at the end of down along the Bassett. Yeah, so they stayed out there in their cabin. Oh, it was a beautiful trip. And again, they went down in powerboat and canoe, and so it's just amazing for those children to identify with that. So for us, we identified with just trying to put that program together, and it didn't cost a whole lot of money because, well, Children's Aid has money to do that. So for us, it was just finding somebody to do the Indian tacos and the fried bread, and every community has that option to do that. So it's just thinking outside the box, I think. It's being creative with that, and it's caring for that next generation. It's our responsibility, is to care for the next generation. So I mean, there's no sense complaining if we're not willing to step up and do something. And a lot of times it's, if you do it as a group, hey, it's job sharing, it's cost sharing, and chances are you'll get just as much out of it too. So you know, with those kind of programs, those could be some maybe placement options if you start to look at. How can we create a program that's going to meet the needs of placement for the institution, but also help the individual, the student, understand about another culture? And I think it's just about enriching each other. I mean, the people that I've had an opportunity to work with, I didn't know it was really like this. So they gain an appreciation of how much we as Aboriginal people have been able to overcome in the diversity, and also where we've come from, you know, being a very oppressed people, a very impoverished people. So yeah, our MEN program, we call it the NFL, Plug for Nurturing Fathers program. It's a beautiful program, running now 15 years, and the guys just enjoy it. 6 meetings, 3-hour meetings, and that's all we ask of these children, and that's all I ask of the dads. You're here for 3 hours. We know when you get outside that door, life happens, but we just want you to be here for 3 hours. Put your cell phones if you really need them, but you really don't. Just be here, because there's an emergency number here and everything. So just be in that space, and I think that's the other thing that we had these children, even though their space was all over the place in that bush, but they were there on that land, and that's very important. You have to get them back there. And I mean, even as instructors, it'd be nice to get them out and put them back in the bush and say, there you go, let's do some orientation. Let's see if you can find your way out of the bush. I know the bush that I'm thinking about, if the instructors are teaching social work here, at the most 45-minute walk, and they wouldn't be lost, because there's a road all the way around the bush. Yeah, put them loose back there. Give them a can of water and say, you survive.
All right, I'll go. Thank you.
Yeah, miigwech. Thanks for the opportunity.